Okay, so we're here tonight with Coach Jacob Connor. Coach Connor is the head wrestling coach at Davenport North High School. I believe he's going into his 12th season at North this upcoming season. So Jacob, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for the invite. We really do appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. We're glad you could make it. First things first, and I get sick of hearing myself even say these words, but crazy times in the world, COVID, everything going on. How are you staying busy? What are you doing these days? Trying to keep your sanity, I guess.
Well, we had a baby on March 24th, so that was right in the mix of it. And then on June 4th, I had my shoulder fixed. I had some work done to my AC joint and my labrum and my rotator cuff. So we've been kind of down just as it is. So I don't think it's really hit us too bad because I'm just now getting back. Normally I would drag race, but with the shoulder being down, they haven't even they released me to drive a regular car, but they said I can't drive a drag car yet. So I just literally have just been outside all day working in my race trailer and trying to do stuff around the house, but I got to watch weight and, I got the baby and then my other boy. And so
Yeah.
it's been busy. I don't think, like I was talking to my wife today, I was like, I don't think the stresses have hit us as much. I can see it in my boy because he's a preschooler, so he didn't get to be around the kids there at the end, and he wants to be around people. But I don't think it's affected us too bad so much because we knew we were going to be down some time with the baby, and then we were going to be down with the shoulder surgery. So now I'm starting to get a little bit of, okay, I want to be out and about. I want to see people. I'd like to be able to see my kids and stuff like that. So,
Sure.
but we're hanging in there.
Good. Well, congrats on the new edition. That's always exciting.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, congratulations, Coach. So
Thanks.
Tell us, how did you get your start in wrestling, and where originally are you from?
I'm from Davenport, Iowa. I went to Davenport West. I did not grow up as a wrestler at all. I was just in high school. My freshman year wrestling season had already started. I was a football player, and I just became a thrower. And I had buddies who were wrestlers. My friends were, and some of the coaches that I really liked, Gene Bells and Ralph Hughes, and those gentlemen from back in the day. And they asked they wanted a freshman 189 pounder, and that's about what I weighed. Because they came and asked, like, hey, would you come out for wrestling? And I was like, yeah, why not? I'll come out. And actually, my cousin was the manager on the team, and she told me, she goes, you will quit. There's no way you'll stick this sport out. And so that's the only reason why I ended up staying out. But so I wrestled all through high school. I was never a great wrestler. I was a football player who wrestled just so I could get my W and my stripe on my helmet. And then I played football in college, and I went to Upper Iowa University, and I played center there. And I didn't wrestle. I did throw. I threw in college. I wasn't a very good thrower either. I'm kind of short and small, if you guys haven't noticed, like most wrestling coaches are. And then when I started teaching, Bob Hoffman, if you guys remember Eric Hoffman and Alec Hoffman, he was the head coach at North. And he actually sent me an email and said, hey, I heard you have some wrestling background. I need an assistant. Will you come help me? And I'm like, I don't know that much, but sure. So I started out as Bob's assistant, and 4 or 5 years later, I had to take it over because he had to leave.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I remember the Hoffmans a lot. Do you know what those guys are up to these days? We've been thinking about trying to get a hold of them.
I've heard that Bob recently, or in the past couple of years, moved to Oregon, but I'm not really sure what the other ones, what they're all doing. One of my assistant coaches, I think he still has some connections with them. Okay. Jake Maroka, I think he still, has some sort of connection. He was pretty close to the Hoffmans back then.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
When you got into wrestling, who were some of the wrestlers that maybe you looked up to, or I guess kind of role models for you in the sport?
When I got into wrestling, I did not have a clue what was going on. I didn't know who I was looking at or anything. I know that we had a couple good guys back in the day. Corey Tarczynski ended up second in the state. He was a year older than me. He was pretty good. Travis Moorhead was pretty good for us. Riley, I can't remember his name. He was a senior 119 pounder when I was a freshman, and he would just beat the living tar out of me. Cardell's, Stenders from North Scott. They were really good back then. There was the two brothers or three brothers. I can't remember the word. But like I said, I was a football player who wrestled.
Mhm.
I didn't really grow to love the sport and like, oh, I just wasn't a big deal to me. I was just out there to get a little tougher, for football.
And you had to defy your cousin. You weren't going to quit. So I like.
Yeah, it just wasn't going to happen. And who would have thought all these years later?
Yeah, that's
what was
cool.
going to happen?
Hey, I'm going to expand onto your answer there a little bit, Coach. You mentioned that you were a two-sport athlete. How did wrestling help your football ability, or help you become a better football player?
I think it just helped with, your leverage, staying low, understanding where your feet go, understanding that position is super important, especially me. I mean, being a football player, a lineman, and I didn't realize how small I was, because I could play with the bigger guys. And I just think the endurance, the grind, the knowing that when you're on the mat, you cannot blame the quarterback. You can't blame the anybody else. It's just you. And I think that kind of helped once I got more into wrestling, knowing that I had to do my job and what everybody else did doesn't matter. I'm just going to do what I got to do. If he doesn't take care of his business over there, I'm just going to do what I got to do. And I think that's really helped.
I love that answer. And that's just another item for, athletes, football players that want to be multi-athlete, athletes come out to wrestling. Man, it helps you leverage your feet, it helps you just become mentally tougher, like you had mentioned, if nothing else. I think we've seen that in the past with Brian Ferenz of University of Iowa, saying he loves his wrestlers because they're just tough cats, man. So
I think it helped. Most time we think of it as being a lineman thing, but I mean, there's been some quarterbacks out there who are pretty tough wrestlers. Was it Rocky Lombardi? He's up at Michigan State now.
Yep.
He's from the other side of the state, but that's a pretty big. If you could be a tough wrestler, nothing really stops you. It's just, okay, I got beat up a little bit. Let's just keep going.
Yeah. And I'll say that I've noticed this past season, I know you had a couple guys who really shine on the football, scene. The two in my mind right now would be like the Sheedy Boys, Priest and Cade, of course. And
yes.
And then Jack West ended up, I don't know how much he wrestled. Maybe I'll ask you that. But he ended up being a state qualifier this year. I mean,
yes.
What a great season he ended up with.
He did. He had a great season. Jacko did not start wrestling until he was a sophomore in high school.
Wow. Okay.
That's all. He's just got the 3 years of experience. And, I have to say that Coach Argo got him to come out. They had a very close bond on the baseball field and everything. And, I think Jack could have been, he doesn't matter what he plays. He's going to succeed.
Yeah.
But that's what, if you can get an athlete out there who's going to put the work in, it's going to pay off. And the Sheedy Boys, two tough kids, and there's more of them coming up. I mean, you just got to love those kids that'll work hard, and Jack and it, it's amazing the work those kids put in, because they could go and do something easier or just be like, oh, I'm a football player, so I have to work out in the weight room. That's what's going to make me a better football player. It's like, well, that's just going to make you stronger, but let's make you a really good athlete here. So
yep.
Yeah, Jack was an absolute pleasure to be around.
He was fun to watch. And I saw even in the Quad City Times did an article, he did the burpee mile.
Yes.
Early this summer. That's pretty cool.
Yes. Yeah, that was – I wouldn't even attempt to do that.
That's a special person that's going to do that one. So
yes.
So, Coach, you had a late start in wrestling. Tell us, from what you remember and saw when you were in high school to, I'm sure you watched that was D2 Upper Iowa back then too. The wrestling.
They were D3 when I was there.
Oh, were they 3? Okay. So How have you seen the sport evolve, or have you seen the sport evolve of wrestling?
I think it seems like over the years it's become more mental. And then it's become more morphed into not just folk style. While you're watching folk, you see a lot more freestyle and stuff in that. It's starting to cross over more. And, it's not about some big move or some really strong person. It's become more and more technical and mental. I mean, there's a different mental side to the sport out there that over the years of even coaching, it's just, you got to be on your game and trying to figure out what are they going to do. It's not about looking for the big headlock anymore. You might have to grind one out and just be smart and be intelligent. And I've learned that from some of the other coaches that I had who had a little bit deeper wrestling past. Sometimes it's about winning 1-0, just be the smart guy. You don't have to go and do big stuff, wrestle, be intelligent. It just seems to be so much more mental now.
I know I appreciate that a lot. I remember always hearing, and I'm a big Iowa fan, so you always hear about the Iowa style, dominate, always putting up points, which I think that's fair and a great method. But at the end of the day, if you look at a tournament bracket, your main goal is just to move your name.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't matter if you win by 1 or 20, not 20, obviously 15, but you win score one more point than their guy, and that moves your name. So
yeah. And I when I first started coaching, I was go, try to go, just shoot and take a shot. So go. And it's like over the years, it's like when you watch what really good wrestlers do, when you're facing somebody way superior than you, okay, lose by 5. No, don't try to, but why can't you just have strong defense, be smart, do the right thing, and wrestle? It doesn't have to be, I got to burn myself out the whole time to keep up with this guy. Why don't I just wrestle smart,
Yeah. Who would you say was the most influential, like coach or mentor that you've had as either in your wrestling career or maybe in your coaching career? Or football, that's fair too. Either, whatever.
Probably the most influential coach of mine was my offensive line coach in college, Darren Foreman. He's a California. Oops, sorry about that. I don't know what just happened. Am I back yet?
You're back.
He was a smaller guy like myself, but he just taught me a different way to play. Take the correct steps to beat that guy who's 6'4", 300 pounds. Be in the right place. Be tough. Do it right every single time. Show up. Do what you're supposed to do. So as far as a coach, he was probably the most influential coach in general that I had. I spent a ton of time with him, just unbelievable, because he was also a throws coach in college, so I hung out with him in college as well. And so he just taught me to do things right. And you're small. You're going to take the beating and just keep going. And he was just very, very smart. And that was just coaching in general. When I first started coaching football, when I got back here to Davenport, I said I was having a problem teaching kids how to tackle. How do you get a kid to hit? So I actually called him up, and I'm like, Coach, I got a question here. And he's like, what's going on, Jake? I said, how do I teach a kid to be mean and to go hit somebody and put their nose in there and just go? And he goes, some puppies don't bite. And I'm like, what? He goes, you can't teach every kid to be mean and tough. He goes, some kids won't stick their nose in there. He goes, you got to learn the athlete. He goes, you got to learn what they're going to do. And he goes, some puppies won't bite. So I've learned that over the years. Some kids, they're not going to stick their nose in there. They're just not. And it's very hard to get a kid who doesn't or who is scared not to be scared.
I'm gonna steal that quote from you, Coach. I like that. Some puppies don't bite. So
yeah, they just. And then as far as wrestling goes, the people I probably learned the most, I learned a lot from Bob Hoffman. I did learn a lot from him because I didn't really know anything about coaching it. And then I worked under him for 4 years, and then he left and I took over because he had to leave. And so I really didn't, what I've learned about coaching wrestling, I basically just had to learn on my own because I just didn't know.
Yeah.
I had no idea what I was doing at first. And It wasn't like everybody was knocking down the door to be a head coach at Davenport North. So, they knew I'd do it. So I've just kept doing it.
Yeah. And I don't want to get too personal, but when you say he had to leave, was it a personal choice or what was that?
It was had to do something with his job.
Okay.
Yeah. His job took him away.
Got it.
It was during that time of right after Katrina, and he worked for the Corps of Engineers, and he had to spend a bunch of time down in New Orleans, so he didn't have all the time.
Sure.
And there was a bunch of people mad when he left. Well, he didn't have to leave, and it's like, look, that's what the man told me. That's what he told us. I'm just going to go with that. If you're mad or you want to leave the club or whatever, that's on you.
Sure. Yeah. It doesn't change anything. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Coach Jake, that's one thing I've seen consistently throughout all of our coaches that we've talked to is each athlete is going to be different. Some of them you got to put a fire on them. Other ones you just got to back off and kind of be their buddy and coach them through the process. And each one's going to be a little different on how you got to attack it. So it was kind of cool hearing you say that because we're seeing the consistency, especially on Eastern Iowa, what we hear from coaches about that. So what do you see, Jake, is one of the largest obstacles you've ever had to overcome, either in wrestling as an athlete or as a coach?
I didn't really know when I was a kid, when I was playing, I didn't really see anything as too big of obstacles. It wasn't that big a deal. Coaching's been 10 times harder than being an athlete ever was. I had my first coach that I was coaching football under, Skip Eckhart, when I was coaching football. He goes, you're going to get about 2 weeks into the football season and you're going to be completely lost. You're not going to know what way's up or down. And I'm like, why would you say that? I just walked off the college football field. I'm in pretty good shape. I know what's going on. He goes, yeah, but you took care of you. Now you're taking care of 50 kids. And come week 2, I'm like, what's today? And I'm like, this is tough, And I think that's the hardest thing about coaching is you're not just worried about you. You're worried about, you have 30 wrestlers. You got to know them all. Now, yes, granted, we know how it works. You have some coaches kind of take a little bit more lead on certain kids, and they work a lot better with them. But I think the hardest thing with coaching is you have so much more to deal with as a coach. You're trying to figure out, you're worried about their grades. You're worried about their home life. Some of the stuff that has come up in the past 15, 16 years with kids' home lives, it just blows my mind, that some kids live the way they live, not of their own fault. It's just they don't have. I remember my dad to this day, my dad would still do anything for me. My dad made sure I always had cleats and shoes and everything. And there's kids out there that don't have that. They don't have somebody at home that's on their team. And I think that's one of the toughest things as a coach is you're dealing with trying to get through stuff that you have no control over. There's absolutely nothing you can do. And I think that's been the hardest part is, some of the way these kids lives, it'll make you cry sometimes.
Sure. Yeah. Very diverse backgrounds, and I'm sure you see a lot of that. Can you tell us a little bit about this past season, and then sort of what the outlook's looking like for this upcoming year, assuming God willing we do have a wrestling season?
Yeah. This past season was great. It was a fun one. We could fill the lineup most of the time, and then we had, and I wouldn't even say that we were just filling the lineup. We had a kid that could walk out there and put up a fight, possibly give you a win somewhere. When you're facing, Bettendorf and you're going to face North Scott, and you're facing those tough teams. Yeah, you're outmatched. But this year, there were times where we could go out there and say, okay, let's send this kid out there. He can go out there and actually work, And then when it comes up to, okay, you got Tatum, yes, she's a girl wrestling with the boys, but she could hang with you. She could hold her own there. She's been pinned once by a boy in 2 years. Okay, And then we had, plenty of kids that could go out there and battle, and you could teach them something in the room, and they would take it and put it out there. And it was just a joy. Just, you know, when you're looking at your district trying to figure out, okay, do we have anybody that can make it through? You know, because that's a huge one. And as I looked up and down the line, I'm like, we got kids that can make it through. You know, we don't have the toughest district in the world, and we got some pretty good athletes. If things fall in the right way, they could win. You know, they could get that second spot. They could catch somebody and do something, or they could just, that kid's not ready for them, they can come at them. And this was a great season just because of that. There were kids who would listen, kids that would work and would give you a shot. You know, they would go out there and put it on the line. Let's go. Let's see what we can do. And when they'd walk off the mat, win, lose, or draw, they weren't out there crying. They weren't, you know, they just, yep, I tried. I did my best. You know, they could walk off and be proud of what they did. You know, so that was a great thing with this season, was watching that. So.
Yeah. That's fun to watch.
Coach, you mentioned Tatum Park just a little bit ago. That kind of leads to our next question. I mean, Tatum, one of the pioneers in the sport in the Quad Cities for female wrestling, really paved the way and cleared a lot of obstacles for future, you know, women coming into the wrestling program, and starting up, you know, a couple state championships through the women's circuit there as well. What was it like coaching Tatum? I mean, I had the pleasure and opportunity to watch her wrestle, you know, many boys and just destroy them on the mat. So what was it like being in her corner, and obstacles and great things that you had in front of you?
For me, that was the first girl we had on our team. And it was tough just because you have to get past that fact that she's a girl, and you know, this is a very tough, brutal sport. Watching her take a crossface would almost hurt you, you know, because you think about it, well, you know, what if that's your daughter? You know, what was that if that's your wife? You know, and you see sometimes where, I mean, it was just, they're so physically outmatched. That was extremely hard for me. And it got harder, actually, as the 4 years went on. I knew she was tough, and there was times where I'd be like, hey, you know, maybe we shouldn't have you wrestle this kid. And she's like, I'm going to wrestle. I want to wrestle. And I'm like, he's, you know, we've had to go out to Lisbon and wrestle. And we're like, you know, these kids are monsters. Are you sure? Yes, I'm going to wrestle. I'm tough. I'm going to do it. Whether he beats me up or whatever, it doesn't matter. I'm going out on the mat. I mean, over the 4 years, she showed me some stuff with wrestling that was absolutely huge. Just, wrestling don't care if you're a boy or a girl. They don't care. The mat doesn't matter. I mean, if you win, lose, draw, whatever, it's the same. Granted, I do prefer to watch girls wrestle girls. That is I mean, if you guys, I don't know if you guys gotten to see real good girls wrestle really good girls. It's like watching two really good guys go at it. It's like the same intensity. It's crazy. The girls' state tournament was amazing for me. I really saw a lot while I was up there with that. You know, and it went back to that kind of that Dan Gable thing of, you want to get as many people involved with wrestling as you can, you know. And I was, the first year at girls' state, there were like 80, there was a snowstorm, real bad snowstorm, and there were like 87 girls there or something, you know. And I'm like, okay, it was still intense. I mean, it was the loudest gym I've ever been in, and the girls, their pitch is just crazy, so it's different. And then this next year, there was 300 and something girls there. And as I was sitting there watching them all gather for their picture, it dawned on me, when those girls get older and have a family, when wrestling comes up for their children, boys or girls, there's not going to be a barrier there. It's going to be, yeah, you should wrestle. You know, you should do this. And it's like, because they've already been through it. Yeah, you should. Why shouldn't you wrestle? Okay, and that right there, I've watched, you know, 87 girls go to 300 and some girls, and I'm looking down the line. I'm like, man, every one of those girls, they could have a family someday, and that's going to lead to more people into our sport, and it's going to lead to more boys being into our sport, and it being a more, you know, because people are like, oh, wrestling's dirty. It's like, no, it's not. The mat's dirty. That's where you get the ringworm or whatever. It's just deal with it. Put some stuff on it, you'll be fine. You know, but I think it just leads to more people being involved with the sport. And so I'm all for girls wrestling. I love it. I enjoy it. I don't necessarily care to watch a girl wrestle a tough guy. I don't really, the pound for pound strength is kind of nasty. There is a difference. And I've talked to even Tatum about that. I'm like, is there a big difference between a boy and a girl? I just want to hear it from you. And she's like, yes, they're much stronger than we are. She goes, but I like wrestling them. She goes, because when I go wrestle girls, the girls don't feel as strong.
Sure.
Okay. It's like, okay, let her go.
Yeah, that makes sense. And as far as a really good girl against a really good girl, I know there's been a lot of others, but one of them, and I've talked about this actually with Jay before, is Tatum against Chloe Clemens. I think their junior year is the one I remember, was an absolute brawl, and it going at it just as hard as any two guys I've ever seen. I mean, it's fun to watch.
Yeah, that was a nasty match. Like that. I mean, I think Tatum broke her nose in that match. Maybe. I mean, they fight just the same when you put them on the same field. When they're on the fighting the same, I mean, I love it. I could watch, if I'm watching really good girls or watching really good guys, it's all the same. It's just wrestling to me.
Yeah. That leads us into my next question is sort of, what do you see as like next steps in continuing to help grow the female wrestling? And then do you see Iowa as being close to sanctioning it, or what do you think needs to happen for that to happen?
Well, I think the next steps in getting it to grow is, again, in our clubs, making sure that girls get the opportunity to be in there. Sometimes you just got to say something to a young lady. Hey, you ever thought about wrestling? I know some of the other schools have done things where they've separated girls wrestling out from the boys and they don't even practice together, which I think is huge. Or when I was up at Waverly Shell Rock, I talked to one of their boosters or parents, and he's like, yeah, our girls wrestling team, because they have a huge girls wrestling team, they're like, we let them play basketball. We let them do bowling. We let them do debate. They come in, if they can come to practice, they come to practice. Some girls are full on committed, but if you can just get them, figure out a way to just get them in. I think we need to be a little bit more lenient right now to give them that opportunity to test it out. Do you like it? Because when you think, oh, you're going to go out there and wrestle a boy, well, that's tough. And then there's just all the touching stuff and some, we just had a daughter and people are like, oh, is she going to wrestle? And I'm like, no, unless she's wrestling just girls. I don't want to watch. I'm not going to watch it. And I even told that to Tatum. She's like, oh, is Hannah going to wrestle? And I'm like, no, unless it's just girls.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to watch the beating.
Sure.
I'm like, I said, Tatum, I watched you. She handed out a lot of beatings, but I watched her get beat on sometimes. And I don't like watching that. I don't like that.
Yeah.
So I think that we just need to be a little bit more lenient. Let them do it together. Because we know how girls are. They're very social and they'll keep pulling other girls in. You get that one popular girl, we'll say, in there, and it'll just keep coming. It just keeps coming.
Yeah.
Do I think that the state will sanction it? That gets into some really weird stuff. When we were up at Girls State, they kind of talked to us about why it's not sanctioned, what's going on. And it was huge, and I don't really know. And like the things that they're afraid of in our area, it probably wouldn't be as big a deal because we can get a lot of girls probably out, But in like the smaller rural areas, it seemed like apparently they have trouble with even soccer to get girls to do it because they want to play club soccer.
Okay.
So they were saying there's some stuff. And then once it gets sanctioned, then it's like no longer can girls wrestle with guys because then they get pulled. They have to be all on their own. You have to have your own coach. You have to have a different unit. It becomes a whole nother thing. And then the how do you say it? The sanctioning bodies are worried that it would, okay, we're going to start it and then it's just going to flop, and I'm sure, some schools are afraid to pull the girls away from the guys. That's why so many of the girls tournaments and stuff they're basically a JV tagged on to a boys tournament. Even Girls State is tagged on to a wrestling tournament that Waverly Shell Rock hosts. And the girls actually push the guys into a corner and they wrestle.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe what I was watching. I'm like, those are the boys over there, and the girls are outshining them tenfold.
Sure. They were the big
So
show. Yeah.
Yeah. So do I think it'll get sanctioned? I think there's going to need to be – I think they're going to have to show a few more years of growth at the girls' state tournament for them to say, yes, we are going to sanction it because we think it's going to thrive. But right now, if it keeps growing and we can just have, tag them on to a section over here, that's fine. I think I just want to see it keep growing.
Sure.
All right, Jake, we're through all the hard questions. Now comes the area where we call it's OT, sudden death. So
all right,
got to grind down and get through these last hard 10 questions. All right.
Okay, I'm ready.
So, all right, starting off, favorite wrestling movie.
Favorite wrestling movie would be Vision Quest.
Classic. Favorite superhero.
I
really like Iron Man.
I can go with that. I'm a Thanos guy myself, so I'd have to go against you. But we'll go with Iron Man. Yeah, I still like him. Favorite wrestling match of all time.
Favorite wrestling match of all time. My favorite wrestling match of all time. You want college, high school, what?
Whatever. Which it can be a high school match because that could some days be better than. I mean, you mentioned one already with Tatum and.
My favorite wrestling match I've seen of all time that I just enjoyed. I really enjoyed watching Mark Hall and Kimmerer from Iowa this year when Kimmerer beat him. I don't know what it was. I just really like Kimmerer. He reminds me of Rocky. I don't know why, but he just went out there and just put it to him right there. I loved it.
That was awesome. In Carver, and he'll be back next year.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we took him from Pennsylvania too.
Yes.
Yeah. And he's a young gun boy, so a little bit of a local tie there, right? We got the local young gun. Greatest U.S. Olympic wrestler.
Dan Gable.
Like it.
We're still going through some tough times here. So, what's your favorite food, Coach, if you have any choice? And can you plug one of your local restaurants or someplace you like to go eat up when I come down Davenport North?
I love pizza and I like Quad City style pizza. So I like Uncle Bill's pizza right now. I used to be a Harris guy, but Uncle Bill's has just tripped it, and I love having Uncle Bill's pizza.
Well, look it up.
Yeah, it's delicious. We talked only a little bit of freestyle, but do you have a favorite style between freestyle, folk style, and Greco?
I like folk.
All right. We know you went to college for football, so what's your favorite football team out there?
I love the Hawkeyes. I like watching the Hawkeyes. I do. Who's
your pro team?
I do not have a pro team. I mean, I'll watch pro, but I've never gotten into it. I don't have a team at all, not a bit.
We love our Hawks, though.
Yeah.
We all have that one in common. Favorite vacation destination?
My favorite vacation destination. Since I've been married, we really haven't vacationed much. We usually take our time and go to see my wife's family in Ohio. But she also has her mom's side of the family they're Canadians. So we go up to Niagara Falls, and I'm going to have to say that's probably, as far as a vacation spot, Niagara Falls is just one of the most beautiful and intense places I've ever been. And I'd go back there. I guess I've been there probably 3-4 times, and I love Niagara Falls.
All right, Coach, we're wrapping it up here now. We always wrap up with the same question with everyone we interview. Can you give us your most inspirational or your favorite quote?
My favorite quote is that your opponents don't care about what happened to you. They don't care if you're sick. Your opponents don't care if you have a test tomorrow. And I mean, this sounds pretty bad, but they don't care if somebody in your family died. Nobody's ever asked, how was your day today before I whoop you? I won't put my best out there. So that's my favorite thing is your opponents don't care. They just don't.
Yeah, that's a good. I like that quote a lot. So usually I'd wrap it up now, but I have two more things that just popped into my head. So
No problem. I got plenty of time.
I want to ask you. I think I've heard. I know I've heard. Are you guys hosting Muddy Water Duels? Is that the plan this year?
Yeah, it's coming back to North.
Awesome.
Because they couldn't get a spot when they needed it at Augie.
Okay.
So they're gonna bring it back to North. We have the facilities to kind of host it pretty well, and it seemed like a lot of people wanted it to come back to North anyways. It just seems it goes pretty well right there.
Yeah, that's a good place for you. You've got really nice gym setups there. I like it.
Yeah.
And then my other thing is more of a plug. Jay and I haven't done a podcast for a little while, so I was just going to throw out there to anybody listening, Agoge Wrestling Club and Young Guns Wrestling Club are both active in Iowa now, Tuesdays and Thursdays. They would love to see anyone who wants to get out. I know Young Guns, great club, Eric Juergens. He's got a lot of kids from Illinois who are coming over. And then down at Agoge, Nick Trezino, Brody Grothis, Jacob Schwarm, they've got a really good club going too. It's a lot of Bettendorf kids. I think a couple North Scott, a couple Wilton, more Iowa kids right now, but they're welcome. Anyone who wants to come get a good workout in is welcome down there. I know that, but for both clubs, so I recommend you.
Yeah, we've had kids go to those, and the kids that Grothis and those guys, I know more of the Agoge stuff that they've had, and I really like what was going on at Agoge.
Yeah. Anytime any kid wants to get on the mat, I'm all for it. Even if it's in someone's basement, just more mat time's good. So.
Oh, thank you again for your time, Coach Connor. We really look forward to following you guys and seeing how Davenport North goes this next year. And good luck.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you for tuning in. Please share this podcast with your friends. Give us a like and a follow on Facebook and Twitter at QCA Wrestle. And keep an eye out for more QCA wrestling content coming soon.